Kelsey Kishi Draws is going to be very different in the year of 2026. Something needs to change. This is going to be the end of Kelsey Kishi Draws as we know it. Hi, my name is Kelsey Kishimoto, aka Kelsey Kishi Draws. I'm an artist based in the Bay Area of California. I draw stuff and sell it, and very often people buy it from me. And I've been able to make a living off of that for the past few years. And it's been really great, but that being said, this is going to be the end of Kelsey Kishi Draws as we know it. I'm at the point where something desperately needs to change. Let's talk about it. 2025 has been by far the most successful year for my business. I've been able to sell at large events I've only ever dreamt about before, like Anime Expo. I've traveled all over the country selling my art to so many different people who are excited about it. My social media platforms are larger than they've ever been, and every year of my business, things have only gone up and up and up, and 2025 has been the most up year so far. And it has been everything, and at the same time, not nearly enough. What Kelsey Kishi Draws is right now is that it's basically a merchandise business. This is where you buy art from me. It's how I make more than 95% of my income is just selling my art directly to consumers. It has allowed me to be my own boss. I've been able to work for myself because I'm in control of everything. And it's been wonderful, especially given my previous work experience where it's just, I'm definitely traumatized by the workforce. So to be able to be my own boss creating art has been wonderful. The only thing is, selling my art as merchandise was absolutely never the end goal. My intentions for this part of my business were to be a launching pad so that I could enter the art industry. I didn't go to school for art, and so I didn't really have that much skill or experience. So I just decided to create my own path, and that's where I've been up until now. The thing is, I don't want this to be the final iteration of my business. So where do I actually want to go, and what do I actually want to do? Well, in order to understand where I'm trying to go, we need to understand where I've been. So let's talk about first Kelsey Kishimoto 1.0. It's 2016 in the desert of California, Lancaster, and Kelsey Ikatar has just graduated with her bachelor's in elementary education and music. I went to school to be an elementary school teacher, and I also studied music because my plan was to go to a church school and to teach kids during the week and then to play piano and sing in choirs on the weekends. That is what I went to school for, to be a church pianist, a music director, and then a school teacher during the week. And that's exactly what I did for the first 2 years out of school. I moved to Hawaii and I taught 4th grade, and it was a dream come true. Think about like a single 22-year-old girl moving to Hawaii on her own. It was literally like the stuff made of like rom-coms, you know? It was so fun. And I was able to do exactly what I just talked about. I taught during the week. I played piano at the church on Sundays. I directed choirs and I helped with music and stuff like that. And it was wonderful. That being said, I've always loved art. And actually, as a teacher, I was always teaching my students how to draw. On Wednesdays was a special day where I would actually draw on the chalkboard some kind of pop culture character, whether it was BB-8 or Batman or something. And then I would teach my students to draw it themselves. And they always told me I was such a great artist. And a lot of them were great artists themselves too. But I use it as an example to show, like, even when I was in a different career field, art was always a part of me. For as long as I can remember, I've been drawing. I have very vivid memories of drawing in church. I've always doodled my whole life. When I was in high school, there was this syllabus for a class that we had, and I remember just like filling up every corner of that syllabus with doodles, just like as many doodles as possible. And I remember being so proud of myself because I would get really creative, you know. And I had a friend too in high school. During class, we would kind of just pass notes back and forth, and we would like draw off of each other's notes. So she would draw like a scribble, and then I would add like something to it. And back and forth, we'd turn that scribble into a piece of work. So it's just like art has always been a part of me, but I wasn't necessarily raised to pursue things like that. The environments I grew up, we were more pressured to follow, like I mentioned, more traditional paths for the circles that we were in. For example, being a school teacher. That being said, I didn't do it like resentfully. I was really excited to be a teacher. I thought it was going to be a great thing. And it was for a time. There's definitely a season in my life where teaching served me. And I was really grateful to contribute to the next generation in the way that I did. But at a certain point, it did start burning me out. While in Hawaii, I met Cody, who would become my husband. We got got married, and he, as much as he loved the island, he wanted to go kind of discover other places. So we moved around a bit. Eventually, we found ourselves in San Francisco, where I was teaching fourth grade for a year. Then after that, I moved to preschool and I taught for 2 years, which was very, very magical. When I think back on like my teaching career and there's an era I miss the most, it's definitely teaching preschoolers. There's just something so sweet and magical about it. And if I had to go back, I would definitely go back to that time. I also found myself substitute teaching for a little bit. So in total, I had about 6 years of teaching under my belt. And as wonderful as it is and as grateful as I am for that season of my life, it was not sustainable, to be honest. If you know anything about the education industry, it's that it is falling apart. Teachers are not taken care of the way that they ought to be by admin, and they're not treated well by parents. And children are wonderful, but they take a lot of discipline, and that takes a lot of work and energy, and quite frankly, money out of our own pockets. So it wore away at me. It was getting to a point where I was deeply unhealthy, physically and mentally, and I needed to step away from it. In the middle of my career, COVID happens. I get a little bit of a break. I'm making video lessons instead of going to actual classes. So that was kind of nice for me to have that break. And with all that extra time, I did what most people did, and that was rediscovering old hobbies of mine. I started listening to K-pop again. I started watching anime again. And most importantly of all, I started drawing again. I bought an iPad, an Apple Pencil, and I found out I don't totally suck at drawing. I mean, my first drawings weren't that great, but I was excited about it. And I just kept drawing and drawing and drawing. I saw this trend on TikTok where people would draw themselves as different anime styles, and I just thought it was really fun, so I participated in myself. Because of that video, I accidentally booked my first ever client. He was a friend from college who saw that video, and he wanted me to do the same for him, and he asked me to draw him as like a fairy tale character, and I was like, sure, why not? I didn't even charge him. I was just like, yeah, well, I got all this time. It's fun. Why not? And so I went above and beyond. I gave him 2 or 3 different illustrations of himself, and then he did the craziest thing to me at the time. He sent me money in the form of a Starbucks gift card. And in that moment, it just kind of clicked in where I was like, I can make money off of this. It was my first proof of product. I could actually sell this kind of thing. And he wasn't the last one. I had tons of friends from college and all over the place just asking me to start illustrating them and drawing for them. And soon it got to the point where people I didn't even know were finding me through my social media. And for a whole year, I just took personal commissions like that. And that's what I was doing on the side in addition to teaching when I did eventually start teaching in person again. Through this, I was able to really develop my skills because, reps is really just how you get better. And I started getting really confident in my art skills. The algorithm realized I was drawing. It started bringing along artists my way who were catching my attention. And I realized not only could you sell commission products, you could create pieces and then just sell those as well. People were turning their art into stickers and postcards. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want to do that too. So in the summer of 2021, I opened my Etsy shop, and I sold at the time only Disney princess stickers and maybe some Star Wars stuff. It was all fan art. I think 1 or 2 original sticker designs. I had previously sold single stickers just on my Instagram, but this was the first time I had opened up a full shop full of it. And I had 40 orders on the first time that I opened my Etsy shop. It was very exciting. Again, more proof of product. Around the same time, I accidentally stumbled across an artist who would later become a friend of mine, Goyangi, Sarah, as she was selling at Mini Art Mart in Japantown, San Francisco. I used to go to Japantown for fun, just all the time. And I stumbled across a Mini Art Mart event. I saw all these artists selling their art, and Sarah particularly caught my eye because I was actually already following her on TikTok. So to see her in person, I was like, oh my gosh, I know you. And I was just so in awe that this person was making a living selling her art. And I just felt so inspired to do the same. In the year of 2021, my husband gets a job in the suburbs of San Francisco. So we had to leave the city, and I had to stop teaching for a moment as we were moving. This was at the point where my mental health is really just at its absolute worst. And Cody tells me to slow down. I don't need to immediately find a job. I can take my time looking for that. And so I do. And while I'm doing that, I'm drawing and I'm selling my art. And I book my first ever in-person event at Mini Art Mart, that exact art market I visited just a few months before in May of 2022. At the same time, I did eventually start teaching a little bit. I was a substitute teacher at a school, but when I wasn't filling in for other teachers, I was booking more events. In the year of 2022, I ended up selling currently at 7 events, and I was just getting more and more encouraged seeing people purchasing from me. So 2023, I went a little bit harder. In 2022, I had 3 jobs. I was the worship leader at my church, I was a substitute teacher, and I was selling my art at some events and online. In 2023, this spring, I dropped that teaching job because I had booked 30 plus events, and art was making much more money than teaching was at that point, and I was down to just 2 jobs. In 2024, I booked 40 events, and in the spring, I was able to drop that last job as music director and worship leader at my church, and at this point, I'm a full-time artist, and I'm making a living off of my art, which is something I only ever dreamed of as a kid. Like I said, that wasn't necessarily a career path I was even allowed to consider. I was always going to be a teacher, I had decided, since I was like 10 years old. So the fact that my new career was art was mind-blowing, honestly. And like I said, it's been amazing. It's been absolutely everything. And at the same time, it's not exactly what I want to do. Going back to little Kelsey, I've always loved stories. For as long as I've been drawing, I've also loved stories in whatever format I could get them, whether they were books, whether they were movies, television, comics, animation, whatever. I've always just loved a really good, compelling story. It just so happens that my favorites happen to be illustrated or animated because I was also an artist. And I can vividly remember the first time I was like genuinely shook by animated or illustrated storytelling. Picture this. It's 2005, Friday night after school. You had just finished all your homework and you've eaten dinner and you sit down, you turn the TV on and you hear the ending theme song to Inuyasha, or you hear the choir singing in Bleach because Ichigo Kurosaki just pulled out his Zanpakuto and he's about to kick some butt. I want you to think back to Adult Swim when it's late at night and you're watching these. I grew up in Japan the first 4 years of my life, so I was very familiar with Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball, but it was in Japanese, so I didn't know what was happening. This time around, I'm watching anime in English, and I'm seeing these really great, awesome stories being told through animation. Because up until this point, cartoons were made for kids. It was like the stories were limited. Watching anime, I realized animation is only limited by our imaginations. It doesn't have to be just for kids. It can literally be whatever we want it to be, and it can be as complex and as mature as we want it. And that's when I started getting really excited about this particular avenue of storytelling. In my middle school years, I started making comic books based off all the manga that I would read. They were pretty crappy, but it was something I was really excited about. I was always drawing, and that has always been my heart's desire. There is just something about a really compelling story that genuinely leaves a mark on you, unlike anything else. When I was growing up, I was a little bit shy. I'm not anymore. I don't know what happened to her, but I used to be. And I would love to escape things through stories. I'd spend my whole day at school and I'd come home and I'd read manga, or I'd come home and I would watch cartoons, or I'd read a book. And it's just like that escape that stories provide is unlike anything else. Even now as I'm older and I'm extroverted and I enjoy hanging out with people, one of my favorite parts of the days is when I still come home and I read something, whether that's fan fiction on Tumblr or some book or some manga or whatever. Stories still have like this grip on me, and it is my biggest dream to write my own story. Particularly, I want to write my own comic book. I want to continue what middle school Kelsey started and make something that when people are done with their long day of work, they can escape into this universe. That is my biggest dream. And like this, my art business, my merch business, this truly was just supposed to be the launching pad so that one day I could do that. I always tell myself I don't want to write something and then no one reads it. That's like my worst nightmare. And so I took these past few years to build some credibility, to build a platform so that when I do write something, at least there's a few eyeballs on it. And I think, based off of my following, there'd be a few eyeballs on something if I were to write something and release it now. As wonderful as 2025 was. And I will say I have zero regrets. I don't want people to think like, oh, I never should have gone into this merch business. No, this has been fantastic. I think this has played out exactly the way it was supposed to. The only thing is I just don't want to repeat what I've done. I think this is the point where something needs to change. And 2025 was great, but 2026 needs to look very, very different. I don't just want to be a merch business. I want to be a storyteller. I want to write a comic book and I want to publish it and I want you guys to read it if you want to. I hope you want to read it. So how am I going to do this? Well, Here's how. First step in this new phase of Kelsey Kishi Draws is to 1, book fewer events. I am already on a great track considering the fact that I've been rejected to a lot of events that I did last year. While that before would have really discouraged me, I actually am finding that to be good because, like I said, I've already decided I need more time for my art. And as wonderful as events are, I have found them to be a bit of a distraction. In the year 2025, I definitely found myself selling art more than creating art, and not by close margin. The gap was way too large, to be honest. I was barely able to create anything, and I found that to be really discouraging. I always want to be an artist first, not a business first. And that definitely was not true for 2025. So book fewer events in the year of 2026 and focus more on illustrating my comic, which would be step 2. Moving forward, all of the art I publish, I want it to be related to my comic, whether it's the actual comic itself, or it's character illustrations, or it's just pieces I'm putting out there to get people invested in this universe. I want you guys to start getting invested in these characters and this world that I'm building. I will definitely be introducing a lot of it here on YouTube, but it will be mostly through my Instagram. So if you want to see the actual pieces of art, make sure to be following me on Instagram. Something I want to do is use rejected convention weekends dedicated solely to my comic book. So let's say the weekend of AX. I didn't get into AX 2026. So the same days that I would have been selling at AX, that Thursday through Sunday, I'm going to set aside and treat those solely as work days. If I have to go lock myself up in a room for 4 days and just work, I will do that. It's kind of my plan for all these weekends that I have off, just to really, really hone in on this comic book. Now, that being said, when it comes to my comic book, for the year of 2026, I have some goals specifically related to this. And these might be quite ambitious. I've never written a comic before, so I don't know. But I feel these are really ambitious, and I don't think I'll actually be able to accomplish all of them in 2026. But we have to have some kind of goal, right? I'll figure out what's actually doable later. But first off, I definitely want to have the script written fully out for at least for the first 3 chapters. I want to create character profiles for each main significant character, and this one might be really big. I want to fully illustrate the first chapter. To those of you who aren't familiar with comics, that might not sound like a lot. To those of you who are familiar with this kind of work, that might be overly ambitious. I have no idea. We'll find out. But these are just some goals that I've set aside for myself in the year of 2026. And in addition to all of that, I want to document the journey here on my YouTube channel. Up until this point, my YouTube channel has mostly, almost 100% been about my business. I think I only have 1 or 2 videos about my actual art. And that's something I want to pivot in the year of 2026. You can still expect convention videos because I do have events booked already for the year of 2026, and I've applied to many, many shows. But I do want to incorporate more about the actual art part and less of the business, and introducing to you guys these characters and where I'm at in my comic. So that will actually be a whole series in and of itself, creating my comic. And I hope that you guys will be along for the journey. All that being said, I keep saying creating my comic. What the heck is my comic book even about? Well, if you see my logo, you'll notice it's not me. It's this girl. Her name is Shizuka, and my dream is to write her story. To give you a general idea of what's going on, Shizuka, lives in a post-apocalyptic Asian society where there is a very large gap between the haves and the have-nots. And there's also a little bit more going on, as you can see in her features. There's more to her than meets the eye, which is something that would be revealed in the comic. But just to give you guys a little bit of idea, there are some other characters in the universe. Here are some kind of rough drafts I have of them. I've kind of sprinkled them throughout my business, but I've never really touched on them too much. But just know her world has definitely been touched upon in my products without you guys even knowing. If that sounds interesting to you, I really, really hope that you will tag along. Like I mentioned, I have those goals for this year that I really hope to accomplish, or at least do part of it, and I will be documenting the whole process here. Kelsey Kishi Draws is going to be very different in the year of 2026. There will be some similarities, but as a whole, my goal is for this year to be a pivot year. This is when things start to change. I haven't felt this sick with desire since I first started my art business back in 2021. I remember dreaming, truly just dreaming about what I have now. I remember dreaming about having online orders stack up so much that I was getting lost in them and I wasn't able to keep track of them, which is me on a regular basis now. I'm not able to keep up with my online orders. I imagined having a whole office full of art and products, and I'm sitting in it. I literally dreamed about what I have today. I dreamt about it so much it made me sick. And 4 years later, here I am in the middle of it. This sick feeling I have in my gut is the beginning of something. And maybe it's a bit ambitious, the goals that I have and the dreams that I have for myself. But I mean, everything starts somewhere, right? I just want to thank you guys so much for being a part of my journey up until this point. Whether or not you just joined recently or you've been following me since the very beginning, I am so grateful for you. Like I always say, as an artist, to make something and to have eyes look at it, that's a gift. And I'm really, really grateful that you guys give me that gift. So thank you so much. And this is the beginning of hopefully a brand new chapter. Oh, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you see you in the next vlog. Thanks again. Bye.